Clara Whitfield hadn't slept more than 4 hours in a single stretch for 2 years, 3 months and 11 days. She knew the exact number because that was the night her parents died on Route 9, just 6 miles outside of Billings, Montana, in a rainstorm that the Weather Channel had called mild. She had been 24 years old, living in a small apartment in Denver, with a graphic design job she loved and a life that was finally starting to feel like her own. Then the phone rang, and everything she had built for herself quietly disappeared. She drove back to Billings the next morning with one suitcase. She never went back to Denver. Her siblings were 9, 7, 5, and 3. Lily, Marcus, Sophie, and baby Owen. 4 children who had no one else in the world but their big sister. Their only grandparent, their mother's father, was in a memory care facility in Spokane and didn't know what year it was anymore. Their father's family had never been close, and after the funeral they offered condolences and plane tickets home and nothing more. Clara signed the guardianship papers in a grey courthouse hallway on a Tuesday afternoon and drove the 4 of them to the house on Birchwood Lane that now belonged to her alone, along with its mortgage payments and its leaking back porch and its furnace that rattled every time the temperature dropped below 30. She did not cry in front of the children. She had decided that the first night, and she had kept that promise to herself every single day since. The graphic design job moved remote for a while. Then the company downsized, and Clara found herself freelancing at 11 o'clock at night after 4 lunches packed and 1 load of laundry and 1 round of homework help and 2 bedtime stories and 1 nightmare comforted and 1 scraped knee cleaned and bandaged. She charged less than she should have because she was afraid to lose clients. And she worked more hours than she should have because the mortgage didn't care about her fear. By the time Lily was 11, Marcus 9, Sophie 7, and Owen 5, Clara was 26 years old and she looked, she thought, approximately 40. There were shadows under her eyes that no amount of sleep seemed to touch. She had stopped calling her friends in Denver because she never knew what to say. When they asked how she was doing, and she was too honest to lie and too exhausted to explain, she moved through her days with a kind of grim, focused love that left no room for anything else. She loved those 4 children with everything she had, and everything she had was all she could give. She did not think about loneliness. Loneliness was a luxury she could not afford. The ranch next to the Whitfield property had sat empty for almost a year before. Jake Calloway bought it in early April. Clara noticed the moving truck on a Saturday morning when she was hanging laundry on the line and Owen was chasing a grasshopper through the yard. She didn't think much of it. New neighbors were new neighbors. She had enough going on without introducing herself to anyone. Jake Calloway was 31 years old, broad-shouldered, and quiet in the way that certain men are quiet, not from shyness, but from the habit of thinking before speaking. He had grown up on a ranch in Wyoming, spent 6 years in the army, come home to find his father's land sold and his family scattered, and spent the next 4 years working other people's cattle until he had enough saved to start his own. He wasn't looking for community or connection. He was looking for a piece of land and a life he could build with his own hands. He noticed the Whitfield house the way you notice something that doesn't quite fit together, the broken porch rail that needed fixing, the flower beds that someone had started and abandoned, the single light burning in the upstairs window long after the rest of the neighborhood had gone dark. He noticed the young woman who carried groceries inside in 4 trips because she didn't have anyone to help her carry them. He noticed the 4 children who tumbled in and out of the yard like a small storm system, and how she tracked all 4 of them, simultaneously with the practice focus of someone who had learned that turning your back was not an option. He didn't introduce himself for 3 weeks, not because he wasn't interested, because he was trying to figure out what exactly he was looking at. The first time they spoke was because of a crisis, which Clara thought was fitting because her life operated entirely in crises. Owen had climbed the old oak tree at the property line and could not get down. He was 5 years old and convinced that he could do anything his older siblings could do, and this confidence had already cost Clara 2 emergency room visits and 1 call to the fire department. This time, when she heard him crying from 20 feet up, she was in the middle of a client call she could not end, and Lily was trying to talk Owen down, and Marcus had run to get the ladder from the garage, and Sophie was crying because Owen was crying, and Clara was standing in the yard with her phone pressed to her ear, murmuring professional things into the receiver while simultaneously mouthing instructions to 4 panicking children. Jake came around the fence line with the calm of someone who had handled situations considerably more dangerous than a 5-year-old in an oak tree. He said nothing to Clara. He took the ladder from Marcus, braced it against the trunk, climbed 6 rungs, and held out his hand to Owen. He spoke quietly. Clara couldn't hear what he said. Whatever it was, Owen reached out and took his hand and let himself be brought down. She ended the call. She walked over. Owen had his arms around Jake's neck like he had known him forever. "Thank you," she said. "I'm Clara."
"Jake," he said.
"From next door." "I know." She reached for Owen, and Owen transferred himself to her hip. "He does this. I can see that." There was no judgment in it, just observation. She expected him to leave. He didn't. He picked up the ladder and said, "You want me to put this back where I found it?" She said yes. That was all. He returned the ladder to the garage, nodded at her from across the yard, and went back to his side of the fence. That night she thought about it longer than she meant to. He started helping without being asked, which was the only way she ever would have accepted it. He fixed the porch rail one afternoon when she was at school pickup. She came home to find it done, and no sign of him, and she stood there, for a moment, not knowing what to feel. The next week he left a bag of vegetables from his garden on her back step. Tomatoes, green beans, zucchini, and the children found it before she did, and were thrilled. Marcus knocked on the fence to thank him and came back with the information that Jake had a horse named Sergeant and had promised to show him sometime. Clara went to the fence herself that evening. "You don't have to do all this," she said. "I know," he said. "I mean it. We manage fine." He looked at her, not unkindly but directly. "I know you manage. I've watched you manage for 3 weeks. That's not what I'm doing." She didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing. He waited. "What are you doing then?" she finally asked. "Being a neighbor," he said. "That's all." She wanted to argue with that, but there was nothing in it to argue with. She went back inside. She sat at the kitchen table after the kids were in bed, and she felt something strange move through her chest, or something warm and unfamiliar and slightly alarming, and she recognized it, distantly as hope. She pressed it down immediately. Hope was the most expensive thing she couldn't afford. But he kept showing up, not constantly, not intrusively, just steadily. The way water keeps moving even when you put something in its path. He drove Marcus and Sophie to soccer practice one Saturday when Clara had a deadline. She genuinely could not move. And he sat in the stands with the other parents, and he did not seem uncomfortable about any of it. He taught Lily how to patch a bicycle tire. He showed Owen the horse, and the look on Owen's face, pure, absolute wonders, was something Clara photographed with her phone and looked at later when the days were hard. He never stayed too long. He never pushed. He never once made her feel like she owed him anything. And somehow that restraint was the most disarming thing of all, because she had spent 2 years waiting for the catch, and there wasn't one. She started leaving coffee on the fence post in the mornings. He started stopping to drink it. Those 15 minutes before the kids woke up became, quietly, the best part of her day. He asked about her work. She told him about graphic design, and he listened without, pretending to understand every detail, and asked actual questions. And she realized somewhere in the middle of the 3rd morning that she hadn't had a real conversation with another adult in longer than she could remember. "Don't you have somewhere to be?" she asked him one morning. "I'm a rancher," he said. "I make my own schedule." "That must be nice." "It has its moments." He looked at her over the rim of his coffee cup. "You never stop, do you?" "If I stop, things fall apart." "What things?" She gestured at everything. The house, the yard, the general shape of her life. He nodded slowly, like he was thinking about something. "Things might surprise you," he said. If you let them. She didn't answer, but she thought about it for days. The night things shifted was an ordinary Thursday. Lily had a school play. Marcus had a stomach bug. Sophie had a science project due the next morning that she had not started. Owen had refused to eat dinner and cried for 45 minutes about nothing and everything, and finally fallen asleep on the kitchen floor. And Clara had carried him to bed and come back downstairs to find Sophie's project materials spread across the table and a sink full of dishes and a client email that needed answering tonight. She sat down at the table and put her head in her hands. She did not cry. She had promised herself that. But she sat in the silence of the house, and she felt the weight of it in a way that she couldn't push past tonight. Couldn't muscle through, couldn't manage. She was so tired. Not just in her body, in the place behind her body where the self lives. She was tired there in a way she didn't have words for. There was a knock at the back door. Jake stood on the porch with a casserole dish covered in foil, and an expression that said he wasn't sure he was doing the right thing, but he was doing it anyway. Lily mentioned the project, he said. Figured you hadn't eaten. She opened the door wider and he came in, and set the dish on the counter and turned around and looked at her face. He crossed the kitchen in 3 steps and put his arms around her. She stood completely still for 1 full second. Then she pressed her face against his shoulder and she cried. Not the quiet, controlled kind she allowed herself sometimes alone in the shower. The real kind. The kind that comes from 2 years of carrying everything and never once putting it down. He held on. He didn't say it was okay. He didn't tell her she was strong, which she was so tired of hearing because it always felt like a reason not to help her. He just held on, and that was exactly right. When she finally pulled back, she was embarrassed, and he made it very easy not to be. Sit down, he said. I'll heat this up. She sat. He moved around her kitchen like he was comfortable there, and she watched him and thought, for the first time in 2 years, that maybe the walls she had built so carefully were not protection. Maybe they were just a very elaborate way of being alone. He told her how he felt on a Sunday in June, when the kids were all outside and the yard was loud and golden, and she was sitting on the back steps watching them, and he came and sat beside her. I want to tell you something, he said, and I need you to let me finish before you argue with it. She looked at him. I know you don't have room in your life right now, he said. I know what you're carrying. I'm not asking you to put any of it down. I'm asking if you'll let me stand next to it, all of it. The kids, the house, the hard nights, the whole thing. He paused. I'm not going anywhere. Clara, I've been standing next to your fence for 3 months, and I know exactly what I'm looking at. I'm asking you to let me be on your side of it. The yard was loud. Owen was shrieking with laughter. Marcus was trying to teach Sophie a card trick and failing badly at it. Lily was reading under the oak tree with her feet in the grass. Clara looked at all of them. Then she looked at Jake. I come with a lot, she said. I know. 4 kids, a mortgage, a furnace that sounds like it's dying. I heard it, he said. I can fix that too. She laughed. It surprised her, the fullness of it, the ease of it. She had not laughed like that in 2 years. I haven't had time for anything that wasn't survival, she said. I know that too. He looked at her steadily. I made time. I just need you to take it. She looked at his face, honest, patient, certain. A man who had shown her, not told her, what he was. A man who had shown up not when it was convenient, but when it was needed. A man who had loved 4 children into trusting him, before she had even admitted to herself that she was beginning to love him. She reached out and took his hand. Okay, she said quietly, okay. Across the yard, Owen spotted it first and screamed in delight about something he didn't fully understand, but felt was very good news. Lily looked up from her book and smiled the slow, knowing smile of an 11-year-old who had seen more than anyone gave her credit for. Marcus and Sophie kept arguing about the card trick. The furnace would get fixed. The mortgage would get managed. The sleepless nights would slowly become less, then rare, then remembered instead of lived. Clara Whitfield had spent 2 years with no room in her life for anything but love, the exhausting, relentless, beautiful love of a woman raising children who weren't hers by birth, but were entirely hers by choice. She had forgotten that love could also come toward her, that she was allowed to receive it. Jake Calloway had not forgotten. He had simply waited, patiently, steadily, without condition, until she remembered too. Before you leave, if this story touched something in you, if you felt Clara's exhaustion and her moment of letting go, please stay with us for just a moment. Stories like this one take everything we have to create and your like. And subscription are what allow us to keep making them. अगर ये कहानी आपके दिल को लगी हो, प्लीज इस वीडियो को लाइक करें और हमारे चैनल को सब्सक्राइब करें ताकि ऐसी कहानियां आप तक हमेशा पहुंचती रहें. We'll see you in the next one.